What's up, everybody? I'm Brendan. I'm a full stack developer based here in Brooklyn, New York, and today I'm going to be walking you through the solution for the Calculating Churn Rates Capstone project. So, what is a churn rate? Well, in the world of SaaS, and for those that don't know, SaaS stands for Software as a Service. Churn rates are a incredible business metric for measuring how good your product is doing. What is a churn rate? Well, you take the number of cancellations in a given month and you divide that by the number of active users in a given month, and you have your churn rate. This is just a great number to see how your product is performing. You can kind of see if your most recent efforts building out a particular feature has helped or not. You can just kind of see the health of your product. Are people leaving? Why are they leaving? And it's just kind of the first number to look at when you're trying to diagnose why a product is doing well or why a product is not doing well. Churn rates aren't just reserved for the SaaS world. They can also be used for anything, really. One thing that comes to mind is a professor. Let's say this professor is teaching a course and he notices that people stop showing up when he reaches a certain part of the course, and he can actually measure the churn rate. He can see, he can take attendance, he can see how many people started taking the course, and then he can kind of see how many people are showing up or dropping off after the course progresses. And then being able to see those numbers, he can say, all right, lesson 2 was a little weak. Maybe I need to go rehash that. Or maybe lesson 3 needs a little more work. Or, wow, I did a great job in lesson 4. What can I do in the other lessons to improve the attendance? So that is churn rate in a nutshell. Um, I come from the world of startups, so I'm very familiar with churn rates. And coming from the world of startups, you really need to let the data dictate your decision making. So let's say you have a product and you're A/B testing a landing page. Well, you're not going to just randomly say, "Oh, I think this doesn't work, so let's try this." Well, you can actually test that with data, and instead of kind of guessing to see what works or what doesn't, we can actually calculate churn rates um, that go along with these A/B tests. So you've got a landing page, you have one design, and then you have another design, and let's say half the users get one landing page, the other half get the other. And this is what's known as segmenting users. So you can begin to organize and see what landing page is performing better than the others based on the churn rate. You hear a lot of talk about funnels in the business world. When people reach a website, they are in the funnel. Now, the goal of the funnel is to get them to subscribe to the product. So if you're trying to A/B test your landing page, you can say, all right, segment A users have this landing page, segment B users have this landing page. Which one has the lower churning rate? Sorry, which one has the lowest churn rate? And based on the numbers, you can see which one is actually a better landing page and kind of tweak and optimize that landing page. And you can kind of go on and on like this forever, just to kind of tweak and optimize the performance of your landing page, the performance of your marketing campaigns, and even the performance and even the core features of your product. You can even A/B test features of your product and calculate churn rates for those, so you can slowly and consistently improve your product based on actual data. So, anyways, rant over about churn rates. What are we going to be covering today? A lot. We're going to be talking about aggregates. And remember, these are things like sum, min, max. Basically, you give these functions a column name, and it calculates the sum of all the values in that column name. We're also going to be talking about unions. And remember, unions are basically, you have a bunch of tables that are formatted exactly the same, and you just kind of want to join them together. You want to stack them on top of each other like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. That's when you'd use unions. We're also going to be building a lot of temporary tables. Honestly, that's like the core part of this whole project is a bunch of temporary tables. And there's some weird syntax that goes along with that, but we'll touch on that a little later. And remember, we're also going to be talking about cross joins. And basically, with cross joins, you're given two tables. You combine one table with another, with every combination from that second table. I think in the interactive lesson in this course, they bring up the example of maybe like an inventory, a table of like pants, like pant types, and then another table with all the color variants of that pants. So you have all of your pants and you want to see every possible combination of pants and color. So you would cross join the pants with the color so that you could see every combination of pants and color. We're also going to be talking a lot about case statements. And I think for this situation, it's mostly just going to be, is a particular subscription active or is it canceled in a given month? Aliasing is a huge part of SQL, and it's just a way to keep your data organized for you, yourself, and others when they go and look at your SQL queries. We're also going to be talking about churn rate, you guessed it. And yeah, I've already kind of touched on that, but just to refresh, you take the number of people canceling their subscription in a given month, and you divide that by the total number of active people in that month. And remember, it's a great statistic for SaaS companies and online stores / retailers to see how their product is doing, to see how their website is performing. So that is that. Let us jump into the project. All right. 4 months into launching, CodeFlix management asks you to look into subscription churn rates. It's early on in the business and people are excited to know how the company is doing. The marketing department is particularly interested in how the churn compares between two segments of users. They provide you with a data set containing subscription data for users who are acquired through two distinct channels. The data set provided to you contains one SQL table, subscriptions. Within the table, there are 4 columns: ID, subscription start date of the subscription end, the end date of the subscription, segment. This identifies which segment the subscription owner belongs to. So you can just think of segments in this situation as we acquired a user. All right, let's just say that we're CodeFlix and we are running a bunch of ad campaigns and we want to see which one is performing better. So we have a Facebook ad going and we also have a Google ad going. And this is what the segment is referring to. It's just we acquired this user through Google ads and we acquired this user through Facebook ads. And those segments are different. All right. CodeFlix requires a minimum subscription length of 31 days, so a user can never start and end their subscription in the same month. Step 1, take a look at the first 100 rows of data in the subscriptions table. How many different segments do you see? Okay, so let's select all from our subscriptions table and limit the search to just show us the first 100. Save that. The directions say to look at the different segments. How many different segments do we see? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of subscriptions associated with the segment 87, 30. These numbers right here are foreign keys, which are associated with another table's ID, primary key ID. So I'm imagining that there's a segment table, and 87 is the ID that points to a Facebook ad, whereas 30 is the ID of a segment that points to a particular Google ad. So I'm seeing 87 and 30, and that's basically it. All we have to worry about for this project is calculating the churn rates for subscriptions that are associated with the segment 87 and 30. Okay, so step 1's done. Step 2, determine the range of months of data provided. Which months will you be able to calculate churn for? Okay, so let's actually use an aggregate function here. Let's look at our earliest subscription start date and our latest subscription start date, just to see the range of dates of when people are subscribing so that we can actually calculate, so that we know which months we can actually calculate churn rates for. So I'm going to put column name subscription start, which I see from over here. And let me see recent subscription start date. From subscriptions. So this is going to show me 2 columns. It's going to show me the first subscription start date or the minimum subscription start date. And this is going to show me the latest subscription start date or the max. So let's save that. All right, so I see that our first subscription start date in our data set right now is for December the 1st, and our last subscription start date is for March the 30th. And if we remember up here, the directions actually say CodeFlix requires a minimum subscription length of 31 days. So a user can never start and end their subscription in the same month. Now remember, in order to calculate active users for a particular product, their subscription start date has to be before the beginning of whatever month we're talking about for them to be considered active in that month. Now, if they start in December, that means that they're not going to be technically active for the month of December because they started in the month of December. Now, if they started at the end of November and were still subscribed and then continued and their subscription was greater than the first of this month, then they technically would be active. But because I see that our very first subscription start date starts on December the 1st, that means we're not going to be able to actually calculate churn rates for December. You need to know the number of active users for a particular month to calculate the churn rate. And you also need to know the number of cancellations for a particular month to calculate that churn rate. And I see the directions here say there's a minimum subscription length of 31 days. So a user can never start and end their subscription in the same month. So that means that even if you sign up on December 1st, you're not going to be able to cancel for the month of December. You're forced to stay with the product for 31 days. So that means that there's going to be no cancellations for the month of December. And because this is the very first subscription start date, or the minimum subscription start date in our data set, we also can't calculate the number of active users for December, because in order to be technically called an active user, you need to be subscribed to the product before this month. So you can't just say, all right, I signed up for the 1st of December. That makes me an active user for the month of December. No, if you signed up in November, yes, that's fine. But your subscription start date needs to be before the 1st of the month for you to be technically considered active for that month. So we're not going to be able to calculate churn rates for the month of December. Now, we can calculate the churn rate for every other month after that, and I see it goes up to March. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be calculating the churn rate for January, February, and March, and not December. So step 2, I'm just going to remove this for now. Step 3, you'll be calculating the churn rate for both segments 87 and 30 over the first 3 months of 2017. Here we go. You can't calculate it for December since there are no subscription end values yet. To get started, create a temporary table of months. All right, so this was the tricky syntax I was talking about before. When you're creating a temporary table and it's the first table that you're creating in a given SQL query, you have to start it with with. Start with with, and it's saying that I need to name it months and as, and then let us start building. Now, why are we building this month table? Well, eventually we're going to use a cross join to take our subscriptions table, and given each subscription, we want to see, all right, is this subscription fall in the given month that we're iterating over? So we're going to have one subscription record, and then we're going to build out a months table with the start date of January, the end date of January, et cetera, both for for February and March. And based on one subscription, we're actually going to have 3 versions of that subscription. And we're doing this so that we can count, is this subscription active in this month? Is it active in this month? Is it active in this month, for all 3 months that we're looking to calculate churn rate for? And we're also looking to see if they've canceled in that month. So build it, select, and I'm just going to space it out a little here so it's more organized. The first date of January 1st, we're going to alias this as first day. That, we don't have to hard code. Eventually, we're going to use this first day down here, but it's not going to make a lot of sense right now, but that's fine. Just kind of have to go with me here. 2017 01 31 as last day. Okay, and let's stack this table on top of another table with the same format, but for the other months. Union, and then select. I'm actually going to copy and paste because this is taking a while. So I will be right back. All right, and let me show you what this table looks like. Select all from months. And this is a great lesson, actually. You should always be doing this just to kind of see how your table is looking. So once you build a temporary table, add a little query at the bottom that says grab everything from that table. Let's save that. All right, so this is the table we just built. We've got a column for first day and last day. And for the first row or the first record, we have this, this, this. And notice that these kind of correspond to the column name. So we're basically saying, hey, build a table with a column of first day and last day and assign, for the first record, assign the value to the column first day this and to the last day this, and then slap or kind of make a sandwich with these other tables that we're building and just build one big table. Okay. So step 3 is done. I'm going to remove that for now. Step 4, create a temporary table cross-join from subscriptions and your months. Be sure to select every column. All right. So we're going to create another temporary table in the SQL query, but notice how we're not actually going to use with, because we only have to use with if it's the first temporary table in the SQL query. Because this is the second, we don't have to use with anymore. So it's telling me that I need to call it cross join as, and let's start building it. And it's telling me to grab everything from subscriptions, the subscriptions table, cross join. And notice how I'm kind of like indenting things whenever I want. It's up to you how you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. SQL can read it regardless of how you indent it, but I just want to keep things a little more organized. So what are we doing? We're cross joining with months. And what does that mean? Well, I can try and explain it to you, but it's honestly, it's better if I just show you. Okay. So we have successfully created that cross join between our subscriptions table and our, months table. And let me show you what that looks like. So select all from cross join. And let me just show you the first 3. So this is going to grab the first subscription record that we have. And because it's a cross join, it's going to slap on 2 more columns to that subscription. But I'm grabbing the first 3, so we're going to have one subscription with a column of first day and a column of last day with these values, and then the second one is going to have these values, and then the third one is these values. All right, so notice how the data for this one is exactly the same. So this is the first record. Notice it has the same ID, so we still have this first subscription record. It's the same one, but because of our cross join, we're combining our months table here. So for the first one, we have the first, which corresponds to this. Second corresponds to February. Third one corresponds to March. And we're slowly beginning to set ourselves up to be able to calculate churn rates. Eventually, we're going to write a bunch of case statements and another temporary table to see if a subscription was active for this month or were they active for that month, so that based on if they were active for that given month or not, we'll be able to count that or sum those up and eventually calculate the churn rate for that given month and for that particular segment. So anyways, this is what a cross join does. Remember, the example in the interactive lesson, I think it was pants or maybe it's shirts or something. You've got an inventory table of shirts, and you want to see all the possible combinations with the table of colors that you have. So you can use a cross join with shirts and colors to see all the possible combination of colors with all of those shirts. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, so step 4 is done. Remove that here for now. 5, create a temporary table status from the cross join table you created. This table should contain ID selected from cross join, month as an alias of first day, is active 87, created using a case when to find any users from segment 87 who existed prior to the beginning of the month. This is 1 if true and 0 otherwise. So this means, all right, were they subscribed before the beginning of that month? If they were, then that means that they were actually active for that month. And if they're active for that month and they belong to segment 87, then return true so that we can eventually count up all of the ones for that particular month and see how many people were active for that month in that given segment. So we'll be able to calculate the churn rate for that month and that segment. And same thing for is active 30. Is active 30 created using a case when to find any users from segment 30 who existed prior to the beginning of the month. This is 1 if true and 0 otherwise. All right, so let's add another temporary table, and we have to call it status. Over there, status as, and we can build it out. It's telling me to select ID and month. Sorry, first day, this column from this table, as alias it as month. It matters if I actually capitalize that or not, but I'm going to. And then here, using a case when statement. So case when, and notice how I indent it just to keep myself organized. When, and what are we checking for? Well, we want to see if they're active, meaning is their subscription start date less than the beginning of the month or the first day of the month? So is subscription start less than the first day of that month? And we want to make sure that their subscription end is greater than the first day, so they didn't cancel on us. I'm going to wrap this in parentheses just to stay organized. So and, or is their subscription, all right, is their subscription end is null, aka have they not even unsubscribed yet? Great, that means they're still active. So we'll end that. And are they part of the segment that we are looking for, 87? They are, great. Let's return a 1 and we'll count them as active. Otherwise, else, put 0 so that we won't count them as active. And let me just indent this so it's lined up with the when there. And in that case statement, what are we going to call it? Is active 87. Great. So we're done with this bullet point, and let's just do the same for is active 30. We copy and paste this. And all we have to do is change 30 and 30 and get rid of that column or that comma, because these are the only columns that we need for this status table. All right, so step 5 is done. Step 6. Actually, you know what, before I move on, let me just show you what we're working with here. So select all status, limit, let's show you the first 10. See that? No such column ID. Oh, well, this is a great point actually. I didn't even tell this temporary table where to grab data from. If you were following along at home, then hopefully you caught that. But I need to tell it, well, where are you grabbing the data from? You're grabbing the data from, and there we go. So if the first 10 records, we're calculating, all right, is this subscription a member of the segment 87? It is. And were they active? Yes, they were. And it looks like the first 10 records or so, or the first 10 that we're iterating over, are all belonging to segment 87. Okay, that from now. Step 6, add an is canceled 87 and an is canceled 30 column to the status temporary table. There should be 1 if the subscription is canceled during the month and 0 otherwise. All right, so we need to add another case statement here in our table. And what are we checking for? Well, we want to know, is there subscription end date between the first day of the month that we're iterating over or the last day of the month? And do they belong to a particular segment? If they do, then great. That means that actually not great, but that means that we want to return a 1, aka they canceled for that month. If not, we just want to return a 0. So when or if the subscription end date is between the first day and last day, and remember, where are we getting first day and last day from? We're getting it up here from this months table that we cross-joined with our subscriptions. So for each subscription, we're creating basically 3 copies of that one subscription, and the first copy has this data with with 2 columns, basically first day and last day, pointing to this data, and then we have the second one with this data, and so on, so that we can see, all right, is the subscription end date in this month? All right, no. Is it in this month? Yes, great. All right, so that means that they canceled, and it's between the first day and last day, so that means they canceled. So, and do they belong to the segment that we're looking for? 87. If they do, right, then return 1, else return 0. And then in that case statement, call it is canceled 87. And now we're going to do the same thing, but for is canceled 30. Again, nothing is going to change except for the number that we're checking against here for the segment. Do they belong in the segment 30? All right. So that is it. Now let's just show you what that looks like. Select all from, what's this table called again? Status. And I'll just show you the first 10. All right, so the subscriptions that we currently have, that we're currently looking at, they all are associated with 87. So that's why there's nothing going on in 30. But I do see that we have a few active, and we also have a few cancel going on in the segment for 87. Great. So what we're setting ourselves up for is eventually we're going to be able to count all of these and say, all right, based on what month we're in and what segment we're in, what is the sum of active people in 87 and what is the sum of people that canceled in that same month and with that, and who are associated with that same segment. And then with those numbers, we can calculate the churn rate. All right, so step 6 is done. Step 7, create a status aggregate temporary table that is a sum of the active and canceled subscriptions for each segment for each month. The resulting column should be some active 87, some active 30, some canceled 87, some canceled 30. All right, so let's add another temporary table and wants us to call it aggregate, status aggregate. So we're going to aggregate all of the values that we calculated in this status table that we built. Status table, status aggregate as and it's telling us that there should be 4 columns, some active 87, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I know it's telling me literally in the name that I have to sum up all of the ones in this column, all of the ones in this column, and so on and so on. And then alias them as this, sum active 87. So let's use the aggregate function sum, and we're going to want to grab the data that we just kind of built here in our case statements. So let's look at this column is canceled 87 and sum up all of the ones in that column. Sorry, we're not going to look at is canceled 87 first. We're going to look at is active 87. So sum up is active 87 as aliasing it as active sum active 87, like it says here. Right, so that's good for our first column. And let's build out the 4 other ones. Now for this one, we want to calculate the sum of active in 30. That corresponds to this case statement or this column that we built in the status table. And we also want to grab the is canceled 87 and some canceled 87, some canceled 30. This canceled 30 is this one right here. Cool. Save that. Uh-oh. Oh, that's fine. All right, so let me just show you that table. Select all from status aggregate. Syntax error. Oh, I forgot from. No such column is active 87. You don't say. Oh, okay. Same problem again. We didn't tell the table where to grab that data from. From status. All right. So this is great. It's grabbing all of that data and calculating the number of active people in that given segment. But remember, we want to calculate the churn rates for a given month. So we need to say, hey, group it by month. So let's say group it by month. And where do we get month from? Well, we get it from the first day. The alias up there. Okay, so now it's broken down by month. So this is the first month, aka January, February, March, and all of the data. Now I'm just going to add something a little extra here just to make it a little more obvious for you, but I'm going to say select month. So we have a nice little label there. Okay. So hopefully that makes more sense now. All right, so this is saying for the month of January, this is the month of active users who are associated with segment 87. All right, so step 7 is done. Step 8, calculate the churn rates for the two segments over the 3-month period. Which segment has a lower churn rate? We know how to calculate churn rates, right? You take the number of canceled divided by the number of active users, and you have that churn rate for that segment in that month. So let me remove this here. And we are going to want to select, I'm going to say the month. Keep on the same line. Select month. And we're going to take the sum canceled segment 87 divided by the sum active 87 and label that as churn rate 87. But remember, we want to times this by 1.0 to force it to become a float so that it'll have decimal points so we can actually see the churn rate. Because, it's going to be a decimal. It's going to be a pretty small number. So we want to make sure that we can actually see the decimal points. All right. And we're going to want to do the same thing for 30. 30. As churn rate 30. And where's the data coming from? From the status aggregate table. Sweet. All right. So we have the churn rate for a given month and a particular segment. And step 8 is asking us which segment has a lower churn rate. Well, right off the bat, you can definitely see that segment 30 is performing much better. If it has a lower churn rate, then that means less people are unsubscribing, and that is better. We want people to continue to use our product so we can take their money. And yeah, so I would say, hey, marketing team, whatever you're doing with segment 30, keep it up. Segment 87, not so great. Maybe it was a different language in their ads. Maybe whatever language or marketing language that we used in segment 30, aka maybe like the Google ads, it was specialized enough and descriptive enough to actually capture people who are interested in this product. Whereas 87, maybe it was a little more vague and people are like, oh, I could try this. And they tried it and they're like, this isn't for me. So I'm going to unsubscribe. That would be my analysis. But these are great numbers, All right, so step 8 is done. Step 9, how would you modify this code to support a large number of segments? All right, so let's see, what table were we hard coding our segments? Okay, here, our status table, this temporary table that we're building out, we're hard coding, hey, is this segment equal to 87? Then do this. We don't need to do that. We can just say, we can remove this and say, all right, are they active? And have they canceled? And then I would add another column to this table and say, all right, well, I know that they're active or I know that they're canceled in that given month, but let's add a segment column so I can see what segment they're at. And then down the line, I'll be able to group by segment, much like I did group by month down here. And that's exactly what I would do. I would say, all right, instead of calculating is active 87, I would just say sum up is active and is canceled, group by month, and group by segment, so that we don't have to hard code. Remember, we're coders, we're lazy, we want the computer to do most of the work, and why would we not let the computer do most of the work if we could. And what would I change? I would, instead of hard coding all of this stuff, it just makes it super kind of chunky and not repeatable, and it's not dry code. And remember, dry stands for do not repeat yourself. We don't want to repeat ourselves. So I would remove hard coding of this checking for segment, and just, the table that we're building out, I don't need to know if they're a part of that segment. I can just see what segment they're associated with by adding a column to it. And down here, remember, I would not only group by month, but I would also group by segment. And some of you might be confused. Why are you using two things to group by? Just remember that when you're grouping by two things, you put all of those with the same values for both month and segment in one group. So that is what we're doing up here, except we're hard coding it. And group by is super powerful. It can do it automatically for us. So that's what I would do to calculate churn rates for multiple segments. And that is step 9. Alrighty, folks. So that is it for today. I hope you learned a lot about SQL. We really kind of pushed our limits here. We created unions. We created a bunch of temporary tables. And we used a super confusing at times case statement, but I hope now it makes a little more sense. We're able to see if a user is active or not. We're able to see if they're canceled in that given month or not. We decided that, hey, in order to calculate active users, they need to actually be subscribed to the product before the given month. So that's why we ignored the month of December. And we used a bunch of aggregates down here and group bys to make sure that we could see the breakdown for a particular month and a particular segment. And eventually we were able to calculate churn rates. Churn rates are a great metric for business performance. So, if you're looking to level up your career and you're working for a company, why not start calculating the churn rate? Or let's say you want to start your own company. The churn rate would be a great place to start to kind of see the health of your business. And that is it for today. I will see you in the next project walkthrough. Bye.